As a former teacher, how do you believe the PARC test or other state governed tests will affect children in the coming years, i.e., high school and college?
I think the way, from what I understand, the way that they work is it looks like our students, our juniors and seniors, um, if they do not pass this the first time, they will not be able to graduate, or they graduate but do not get a certificate, which is they can't take the test until I guess there's a junior, and I don't know that they even have a chance as a senior at this time. Um, when I was working with high schoolers, they could take their state exam as a sophomore and again as a junior, and if they needed to, again as a senior. It gave them three chances to pass. And these kids were successful. And I see them out in the world now, out around town, and they are successful. I don't see how kids are going to be able to take a test and if they fail it and then say, well, you just get a certificate, and how they will feel about themselves. They talk about making children more secure. That, to me, that seems like insecurity.
I believe that the testing information is very vague in some of the questions. There are some adults I know that have taken the pre-test to some of the questions and have been asked some of the same questions that the students would be asked. For the age group, they are way out of the parameters of what some students may know. I believe that it sets the children up to feel inferior or incompetent when they don't understand how a question is worded. Some of the adults that have taken the test could not pass it, and some of those adults that have taken it have master's degrees. The wording is confusing to some, and I believe all of those factors can discourage children from being excited about learning. I believe too many expectations are put on the actual testing instead of allowing the teachers to take the time to actually teach the children. It's become more about numbers and filling in little circles and looking good on paper than it is actually helping a child conquer disabilities or issues with reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Okay, so I think that the PARC test will actually help them in the future because, one, standardized tests are made to prepare them for, like, when they take it in high school, they take it their freshman and their sophomore years, and then their junior year. They don't take it their senior year. So it prepares them for the things that they need to take their senior year, which would be the SAT, the ACT, things like that. And the difference between the state standardized tests and the PARC is that the PARC is national. And the state standardized tests are written to state standards, which across the country differ. And so if you take a state test, then your expectations are what that particular state feels you need.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't necessarily prepare you for what then you're going to be compared to on the national test, like the ACT. Whereas taking a nationalized standardized test all through high school, you know where you are nationally the entire time. And for the students, I think that's better because they can then prepare and look at, okay, I need to raise my score so that I can, be better suited to this scholarship, or I know that I'm going to be competing against kids at this range for entrance into this program at whatever school. And the state test doesn't really do that very well. So I think personally that it's a good thing. I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
I could be very wrong, but
How do you believe the PARCC tests will affect the educators and schools?
In my experience, I've seen students come from other states and other countries that are already struggling in certain classroom settings. And when you put that coupled with children who may be missing some of it or struggling in other areas, it doesn't give a full, accurate example of where the child really is, because it's limited on knowing the child's full educational background. And because they're going by just numbers and not the actual individual child and their successes and their failures, it is affecting the funding and the job situation for the educators. And I really believe that it's taking so much time away from actually teaching to prep for these tests that children are being penalized by a lack of extra time for them and that's needed to help them get to where they need to be to meet these hurdles. And it's also discouraging for teachers that their education process is being based off of a test instead of someone coming in and doing an actual evaluation and watching how children are learning. It's not an accurate assessment of the whole picture.
I think in some ways it's really good because just like for the students, knowing what they are compared to nationally, it helps the educators be prepared and help their students prepare nationally. So just like students, educators' evaluations are state to state. There's no real consistency as to what you're evaluated on in, say, New Mexico versus Iowa versus DC.
Mm-hmm.
And the PARCC test will help teachers be able to streamline so that a teacher in New Mexico and a teacher in DC and a teacher in Florida know exactly what's expected of their students at whatever given year the student is in. And the other good thing is that then I know that my standards are the same as the teacher in DC, Florida, Iowa, wherever. So I don't have to relearn standards. I don't have to necessarily revamp all of my lesson plans if I move for whatever reason. I know that my lessons will meet the expectations nationally wherever I am. Now the downside, the flip side of that as an educator is that the unfortunate thing is that a lot of the evaluation systems are now including standardized tests up to 50% of the evaluation for an educator. And knowing that students test differently, they learn differently, you can ace a test one day and 2 days later go to take the same test and you can fail it simply because you forgot to eat or you are just having a rotten day, whatever it may be. And so to put so much pressure on educators in their evaluation of the PARCC score and standardized test scores is actually detrimental to educators because we don't feel that we have the space to do what we want to do. Like, it's raise the score, raise the score, raise the score, and not teach them the process and the content to raise the score. If that makes any sense at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have seen that teachers being evaluated and the student tests counting as for 50% of their evaluation is totally ridiculous, especially for special ed teachers. Special ed teachers do not have, their students will never pass the state tests. You might get one that's twice exceptional and has the ability to pass the test, but that's one student out of 4 years that you have 45 students, or if you have 40 students in a year and none of them can pass the test, they will always be failing. The teacher will never be able to pass her evaluation.